Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome. It is Saturday morning. This is Multifamily Unplugged, and I am glad that you're here today. Hey, happy 4th of July. Wow, can't believe that it's July already. 2 quarters have buzzed right by. Here we are starting the second half of 2022. And let me ask you, intentionally, what are you going to do differently? What are you going to do differently in the second half of 22 that you didn't do in 21? What do you need to step up? So, I always talk about intentions, right? And what are we working on to be intentional, to grow our business and to grow personally, because we all need to grow personally to grow professionally. I know today that when we dig into this and we get on with our guest is going to talk about growing personally. Hey, welcome to the show. If you're out in the audience, use the comment box. We want to hear who's here. Drop your name in the chat and tell us where you're from. Good morning, major investor. Glad that you're here. Tell us where you're from. If you have questions for me or Dan along the way, please don't hesitate. Just throw them in there. We'll try and get to them. We're going to talk about a couple things today. First, we're going to talk about multifamily. Of course, this is Multifamily Unplugged. We're going to talk about raising private capital. I'm joined this morning by Dan Friedenberg. Dan is from Toronto, Canada. Has a couple of companies, dandoesdeals.com. You can find them there, or 506B.me. And what is 506B? Well, we're going to talk a lot about what 506B is, 506C, Reg D deals. We're going to talk about private investing, private equity. So, hey, buckle up. I got a new expression, and I think it's one that we're going to run with. So I want you to grab your coffee. If you're new to the show, go wake somebody up, let them know we're live. And most importantly, what we're going to talk about this morning is we are going to talk about the GOB conference coming up. This episode today, we're live. We haven't been live in a few weeks. I'm glad to be live back with you. But this episode today is sponsored by the Gob Network. And if you're a multifamily investor or a real estate investor or somebody looking to get into the multifamily space, I'm going to encourage you to go to the website, gobnetwork.com, register for the platform. There's over 1,000 members across the country that are part of this platform. There's a Slack channel, all kinds of conversation going on a daily basis. So if you have questions, you have interest, you need to learn, you need to grow. Hey, what's the GOB about? It is a nonprofit multifamily organization that supports financial literacy. And we're going to talk about a little bit of that here again this morning. Also, want to just remind you that July 13th and 14th is the GOB conference live here in Chicago. It will be the biggest conference Chicago has seen in a couple of years, multifamily wise. This is the second year the GOB is putting this on. Be at the O'Hare Westin, right by O'Hare Airport. So if you're flying in, it'll be very convenient. There's still discounted hotel rooms left. Listen, if you're looking for a discounted ticket, you can use my last name, Morawski, and you can get a ticket for $97. I'm going to give a ticket away for free at the end of this broadcast today. So let's see who gets, who registers for that by name in the chat. We're going to ask our guest Dan to pick that winner here today. So go ahead and start to just let us know you're here and where you're from. And I'm going to bring our guest in. Dan, right. Good morning, buddy. What's up?
Good morning. Good to hear you. You want me to pick a winner? I won't do anything gross for sure.
Good deal, man. We're going to, we'll pick a winner at the end of the show here this morning. So, hey, listen, I am really glad that you're here. I've had the honor of being on your show and a couple of times, and you definitely have some great conversations, some great things to talk about, which I'm glad about. I love your headshot, though. You look so freaking intense, like the scientist, right? So.
Right. Well, being an ideas guy, that's kind of where it came from. It's, if you ever are just going like, there just doesn't seem to be a way out. It's, well, I tend to find some sort of unusual combination of the tools at our disposal to get us out of the slump and get us moving in the right direction. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey, Dan, so one thing I do at the beginning of all my shows is I ask my guests in one word to describe themselves best personally and professionally. So what's that one word for you?
Well, unfortunately, I have to choose the word complex. And I've told you before that I love simplicity. I would love for more simplicity to show up in my business and career and all that kind of stuff, but it's just not the hand that I was dealt. So I always end up having to put together some sort of complex combination of things to end up making things work in the to get me closer to my goals.
That's interesting. You know, Dan, I always say, and I've really been saying it a lot lately, that I'm going to write a book. One of my next books is going to be I'm going to take every word that everybody has said, and I'm going to write a little paragraph about each person and what we talked about and their word. And I have to tell you, I'm probably 300 episodes in between two or three different platforms over a couple of years, and nobody's ever said complex. So we're gonna. I know that as we get into conversation today, we're gonna dive into that a little bit. So why don't you talk about? Or let me do this first. Let me just say hi to everybody. Hey, good morning, everybody who's out there. Drop your name in the chat. Drop where you're from. Randy Joe, good to see you from Colorado. Major investor, good to see you. Looks like you're from Milwaukee. Glad that you're here this morning. And if I didn't mention you yet, get your name in the chat and let's talk about you a little bit here this morning. But Dan, give us some background on you and how you got in this crazy world of multifamily.
Awesome. So, really, the biggest thing was, I was trained as an electrical engineer, but I also spent 15 years in Taiwan. But part of about 4.5 years of my real estate journey was in Taiwan, even though that was working for a company in Ohio. Basically, I got into real estate from getting into the CRM industry. I was working for web.com, and then I ended up opening my own agency, helping businesses integrate their CRM with their website and then customizing it in a bunch of ways that the CRMs aren't supposed to work that way, but I get it to do it anyway. But as I got bigger and better clients, I ended up started to work for a real estate company. And they focused on single family. I know that they were flipping 10 houses a month the entire time I was there, to my knowledge. And so I had to learn, it's like, okay, how exactly is it that my boss is able to pay me what he pays me? And that's what got me learning it. But being Canadian, I knew that single family and not being local wasn't really a viable pursuit. So once I found out more about multifamily and commercial real estate, I'm like, okay, well, that's the sort of thing that I'd be able to pull off doing over the internet, and the rest is history.
Yeah, interesting. Hey, let's talk about CRM for a minute.
Sure.
Okay. And I'm going to have you explain to people what a CRM is and how important that tool is. You know, when I first went in the real estate business, I started out as a sales agent, and it took me about 3 years. I was on this churn and burn cycle in the beginning, but it took me about 3 years to figure out, a CRM and how important it was and why I needed to have it. And when I think about the leads and the business I did that I kind of didn't keep track of, it still bothers me today because there were a couple hundred there. So, but why don't you explain why that's important and what it is?
Yeah, I love how you ended that off, because it really is what most people would miss. And the other thing that I enjoy about my own CRM experience is because I was working with so many businesses, like we're talking thousands of accounts, and they're all entrepreneurs. So they're all doing weird things to try and, make things work for them. So, just to go right from the start, though, a CRM, it's for managing your list of contacts. And the main thing is, when you are working with people, it's so much easier to go back to somebody you've already met and then try and, drum up something, some sort of collaboration, or, sales, if you want to be more specific. It's easier to go to somebody who already knows who you are and get them to engage in what you're up to than it is to go to a complete stranger. So the name of the game really has to be organizing your contacts and then finding ways to send them appropriate messages instead of treating them all like they're exactly the same. You know, we've been talking about the GOB conference there in Chicago. So if you're promoting it, like one of the things you should be thinking about is let's do a special deal for people who are nearby, because it's easier for them to say yes on short notice than somebody who has to fly from several states away. So organizing your promotions based on where they're located or how much they've spent. If you're a coach or you have other things that you sell, you know, that's who you really need to focus on. And the idea is that it's not just sending broadcasts as in like, hey, this is what I got going on right now. It's periodically you should have some promos where you pick the people who are most appropriate and then you email them, say like 5 days in a row worth of email, instead of just thinking, you know, okay, I'll send a one and done sort of thing and just hope that people are excited to follow through on what you're asking. So that's most of CRMs. The only other thing I'd add is that some CRMs, they include the ability to take orders, and then some of them are just emailing. And so that's one thing that I think a lot of real estate syndicators, investors, operators miss, is they'll get their like Active Campaign, MailChimp, you know, those sorts of CRMs. But when it comes time to start taking money from people like credit card transactions, then they have some new difficulties once that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I really think that, and I try to teach my coaching clients this all the time is, you know, get a CRM and, you know, automate your follow-up, you know, because we have to act like farmers, right? So whether we're raising capital or whether we're talking to sellers about possibly buying an off-market property, we need to act like farmers. So you got to plant the seed, water it, because at some point you're going to harvest it, right? So I always tell people, hey, get a CRM, put people in there, you know, do your automation through it, automate your follow-up, make sure you put a phone call in there down the road, make sure you have a couple of handwritten notes and stay in touch with people, because, you know, people don't care what you know till they know how much you care. And the best way to do that is to stay involved in their life, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yep, I absolutely love that. It's so important to, and I think pretty much everybody, even if you do have a CRM, you're probably guilty of not engaging with the people on your list, or maybe even if you do, you might be a little bit too, you know, me ish, and just saying like, hey, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, buy my stuff, and you're not really sharing value. Like, you know, hey, what's going on? Is right now a good time to invest in multifamily, or should you wait? Or, you know, like questions like that. That's the stuff that you need to be sharing so that people know that you've got their best interests at heart and you're not just trying to, you know, take their investment dollars in something that doesn't really have a future. So that's the real play, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, hey, let's do this real quick. A bunch of other people have checked in. I know there's a lot of people out on LinkedIn this morning and on YouTube. Use the comments this morning. Throw your name and where you're from. David from Kentucky, good to see you this morning. Cheryl, Cheryl's here every week. She's in Boston. Glad you're here. Here's what's going to happen at the end of the show. If you have used the chat, you put in there where you're from. I want to make sure that you also drop in that chat that you will use a free ticket for the upcoming GOB conference that's coming up in July. And Dan and I will talk about that a little bit later. But if you can make it to Chicago, July 13th and 14th for the conference, it's going to be a great event. And we want to make sure that you get a free ticket. So Dan's going to pick somebody, but you have to drop in the chat that you can come to the event. So Dan, let's talk about that crazy screen you have behind you.
Right. Well, that one there, it you know, one of the nice things about my legal status as a promoter, because like that was the hard thing to figure out. If you're programming and doing CRMs, it's like, okay, well, that's a very limited number of things you can write off. But as soon as you are a promoter, then anything that ends up on camera is now a business expense. And so the other thing too is that if I got a fancy car or something like that, not that it's the same price, but I wouldn't use it as often. So as far as productivity goes, this is absolutely fantastic having that much space. And I like to tell people sometimes I actually had the good fortune of playing Xbox in an IMAX theater before. And so I got used to, playing on that as well. And I know from a productivity perspective, if I had an IMAX theater for doing my job, it would not be as productive as this right here. It's because that the width is more important for your productivity than the height, because it's kind of weird to put something down in your bottom left and another thing in the upper right unless you have it out there. So yeah, it's I'm really glad that I picked it up. It's the Samsung G9, so you can check those out.
That's pretty interesting. Always looking for a place that I can have a lot of things open at the same time, not just tabs that I got to switch back and forth.
Right. So. Right. And a lot of people like seeing themselves on the big screen like this during conversations and whatnot. So,
hey, that had to be amazing though to play Xbox on in an IMAX.
Yeah, it was pretty wild.
I remember just being at an IMAX at a movie or some event where you were in a hot air balloon, and that was crazy.
Right. Yeah, so, pretty amazing stuff.
Hey, so let's talk about what you have on your screen, 506B me.
Okay.
What's 506B?
Okay, so a 506B is an exemption that you file with the SEC so that you can sell a security. Okay, you're supposed to have a license before you sell a security. And the easiest way to explain that is to use the idea of a lemonade stand. So if I put up a lemonade stand at the end of my driveway and it goes really, really well, maybe I'd go, hey, I've got like some wealthy friends or, relatives or something like that. Maybe I should go to them and say, hey, lend me some money, or buy some of the profit. I'll invest that into my lemonade stand to make the biggest, most awesome lemonade stand ever. And you'll get a piece of the profit. And you don't have to do anything. If you do that, if you actually accept their money in that situation, you've broken the law. You've sold a security without a license to do it. And as a matter of fact, I hear more and more about how you actually do get licensed to that. I've been told that if you get a Series 65, then you can go ahead. But then even if you have your Series 65, you have to hang your shingle under another broker. And the broker is going to tell you, oh, you need to sell these other securities, not your own ones. So it's a really, really nasty situation to be in. And the 506B part, it's for people who are non-accredited. So that means they're not, fantastically wealthy. They don't have a net worth beyond $1 million, or they're not making more than 200 grand on their own, or 300 grand per year in combination with their spouse. So if you are one of those, then you have your 506.
Hang on a sec. Let's back up a minute. Let's talk about what you just talked about, okay? Because you kind of threw that in, and I know that there's some listeners that don't understand that. So talk about that accredited, non-accredited thing.
Sure. So they have a special status. The idea of a 506B was to say that, we need to give some opportunity for people to sell securities and get an exemption if they follow the rules. But really, they want to make sure that people aren't pitching people on their deals all willy-nilly. Okay. They don't want people selling securities to people who have no business investing in securities because they don't have enough money for a rainy day is really the idea. So you need to make sure that they have a certain level of sophistication before you can share your deals in a 506B exempt filing. But really the main thing is if they are accredited, you can just go ahead. That's totally fine. And so if you have that net worth, but really they want to make sure that people understand these are illiquid investments. So if you turn around and say, hey, I really, really need my money back because I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose, my family or whatever, the whole nature of like a commercial deal is that, your money, when you invest it, it's going to be used to buy new appliances or a new balcony or something like that. And so the money's already invested. It's not sitting there in a bank account for the issuer, the syndicator, to just, pay out whenever somebody needs it. And that being the case, you could ruin lives if you take money from people who need it back desperately. So it's the issuer's responsibility to make sure that you're not going to financially cripple them when life happens.
Isn't one of those guidelines that you cannot take the last $10,000 that somebody has?
Well, there are with Reg A and Reg CF. Like there are some limitations. The Reg A I'm less familiar with, but the Reg CF, it has to go off of whatever's lower a certain number of your net worth and a certain number of your annual income. So you might have a situation where somebody's worth tens of millions of dollars, so they cover the net worth part, but maybe they're a CEO who deliberately pays themselves like $1 a year, or maybe it's like a lot less, and so they might only be able to invest in a Reg CF like like 10 grand or 20 grand or something like that, depending on what their salary is. So that makes it really complex, but at least you don't have to be accredited to invest in a CF or a Reg A. But and then 506B, you can invest as a non-accredited investor, but there are those extra restrictions. The biggest one being you cannot say anything in public about it. It's not a public deal. More specifically, you can't entice investors. I love that term because it makes it sound like somebody's waving a donut in your face. Ooh,
Yeah,
donut.
right. Hey, so in the real estate space or the multifamily space, the two most common offerings are what?
Oh, yeah, 506B and C are the most common ones. So C are for the accredited investors, and you can publicly advertise on those ones. But the 506B have to be private, and you cannot publicly advertise for your deals on those.
So how do I find a 506B investor?
So what you have to do is you have to network and find those investors. You have to get to know them. And the weird, unintuitive legal quirk is you have to document your relationship with those investors. So you have to have some sort of record of when you met. And a lot of the securities attorneys that I've interacted with, they also have this questionnaire that they want you to fill out. That has to do with your investing history, your tolerance for risk, and things like that. So you're supposed to have that in hand before you actually pitch the offer. And that way you have what's called a prior substantive relationship. And so that's the real quirk that, if you were just trying to wing it yourself and not talk to any attorneys, that's the part that I think you get missed on. And I think they invented the laws so that if somebody's just creating a Ponzi scheme or basically some sort of scam where there's no fundamental business supporting the investment, they can still pin it on these people saying, hey, yeah, you didn't document your investor relationships before pitching them and taking their money. And so we're going to yank your exemption. And from what I understand, the penalty, it's not usually orange jumpsuit territory. It's actually that your exemption will get yanked and you have to refund everybody's money plus interest. And the reason why people syndicate is because they don't have enough money to do that in the first place. Mm-hmm. So it's a bad situation to not be in compliance.
You'd have to liquidate your deal probably.
Yep. And you might end up going bankrupt. And I believe you might be at risk of being accused of fraud in that sort of situation as well. But I'm not an attorney. I'm just a guy with an episodic memory. So.
Yeah. Yeah, none of this is legal advice, and we're not trying to raise money right now either. So
that's correct. Yeah.
Hey, as a little disclaimer, because I know my attorney will say, hey, why didn't you, disclaimer this?
Right.
What are some of the best ways if you're a new investor, you're trying to do a syndication, put together a multifamily deal, or any real estate asset, actually, for that matter? What are some of the best ways to go out and meet private investors?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so as far as meeting them goes, I'll tie this back into why I called myself complex earlier. So my piece was I was going, okay, well, I'm not going to be going to in-person conferences because I have I'm what is also known as freedom challenged, because I'm not American. So that means that I can't just go to the local multifamily investors group, like any of those in-person meetups that are pretty frequent in all major cities, where you can just find other multifamily investors, commercial investors, and meet them that way. But online now, there are so many online Zoom meetings that you can join up on. Most of them are after typical work hours. And then there are plenty of opportunities to meet each other and say, hey, this is where I'm focusing on. This is what I'm looking for. These are the numbers that are in my buy box, and things like that. But it's meeting people is absolutely the most important part. The complexity I was referring to, though, is that because I'm from the internet, that meant I had to go, how do I get the information to have that substantive relationship? How do I document those relationships before I get involved, or before they share their private deals with me, for example, as well, because it's a two-way street. I ended up doing it in podcast format. So I just interview people, takes 15 minutes. We had R1, and that way I know exactly what the person's looking for, and basically where they are in their investment journey. And so really finding, like, the nice thing about interviewing people and getting their buy box in the interview that way is that way you're not trying to force something that people aren't interested in on them. Instead of saying like, oh, hey, I got this self-storage deal or something like that. It's like you generally shouldn't be approaching multifamily people with self-storage deals unless you've got an idea that the returns and the operator are more important to this investor than the actual asset class. You shouldn't be saying, hey, I know that you know nothing about this asset class that I'm talking about, but I want your money, so I'm going to pitch you anyway. Like, that's not a good way to do business. It's much better to actually just ask people. And that also helps you do your own research. Like for the last 2 years, everybody's been saying Sunbelt, 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 Sunbelt. I actually went through all the Department of Agriculture's data to find out, okay, so where's really hot? Where do you get, like way bigger population growth than in other spots in America? And you didn't even have to do that, because if you talk to enough investors, you're going to find out, hey, there's a pattern developing here. Lots of people like South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Atlanta, Texas, those are the regular suspects, the usual suspects.
So glad you didn't say Florida just now. I don't want everybody going there.
Yeah, it's Florida's a really, really wild place, and I think it still has lots of opportunity for investment, but I'm not convinced most people would want to live there.
Yeah, it's tough to live there, but a lot of people are moving there.
Right.
I mean, one of the things we look at as a sponsor when we're putting these deals together is population growth. Mm-hmm. And that corridor between Tampa and Orlando, 1,000 people a day have been moving there for the last 18 months. So they're coming from somewhere. So there's a negative growth somewhere else, and people are moving there. And what's interesting about that is when we look at, and I just did a post on this morning on social media, but I said, population growth creates job growth, creates household income. And if you're an owner operator, you want household income to grow, because that's how you grow your rents. So, it's kind of that cycle. It's smart thinking is what it is. And we have this saying, Dan, that follow the smart money, and you can maybe be kind of smart. So look where all the players are at.
Yep, that's exactly it. Where's
a place not to invest?
Right now, well, it really depends on the jockey. So like I got a lot of people in Tennessee where I've got a lot of respect for them. When I hear their underwriting techniques and what they're accounting for, they're really, really great. And I love self-storage because you don't have to evict people. So that's really nice. But me, like, on my 15-minute interviews, which are all featured on dandoesdeals.com, they all have the Dan Does Deals commercial roll die with the 6 different major roles in a deal. And so when I'm going through these, I'm saying like, okay, so this is who people are looking for. This is what's going on. But because I'm responsible for the marketing piece, a huge amount of my business has to be, it's like, okay, so who's looking for my own skill set, among the sponsors and KPs? Those are the people who I'm always looking for, because they have a business foundation where I can really be fuel to the fire, as opposed to when people are first starting. You need grunts, you need brute force, you need to put in a whole lot of effort, and then, you're going to be somewhere. And, sure, I can do that. But the thing is, like, parting with the extra money up front is a little bit scary for most people.
Yeah,
So,
well, there is an investment outlay, that's for sure. And you have to be willing to, if you're going to play baseball, you got to get out of the batter's box and up to the plate.
mhm,
So,
definitely.
it just, hey, so do you do deals in Canada, or most of your deals in the US?
I do not do deals in Canada, and most of it is because I've invested so much energy into learning the American system, and also because I worked for American real estate companies. I'd much rather depend on the network I have than to start from zero over here in Canada. The other thing too is that things are always much faster paced in America. In Canada, they tend to be really cautious. There's a joke we have, actually, Canada Day was yesterday. The joke was, how do you get 30 drunken Canadians out of a swimming pool? Do you know how to do that?
No.
You say, all right, everybody out of the pool.
And they'll get out?
Yeah. Yeah, they might grumble about it and be like, I don't understand why we can't swim it. There's no police here or anything, but all right.
That's crazy, Dan.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, let's talk about the GOB,
Sure.
about the organization, about the upcoming conference. What do you, how involved are you? What do you, what's your part in it?
Yeah, it's so Jim. He has me helping out for one of the 4-hour sessions. So I'll be doing some of the digital for a 4-hour piece of the 2 days, and other than that, I'll be an attendee virtually, watching and learning from all the people who I don't get to talk to often enough. So that's the place that I'm doing.
So the GOB Network is a nonprofit multifamily organization for that supports financial literacy. I think their mission's a great mission. Jim Biggs has really got a big heart and has really been driving this whole thing. If you are not connected with Jim on social media, you need to do that. Need to get connected to the GOB. Go to the website and sign up. There's over 1,000 members right now. And I know that this event coming up in July here, July 13th and 14th, so it's just around the corner. They're expecting 500 to 600 people. So some great speakers, right? I have the honor of sharing the stage with people like Brian Briscoe and John Kasman and Matt Pinchy and Georgia Brew and some other big names. Luke Wren is the keynote. He going to talk about mindset, and we know that in multifamily, mindset is important. So my hat goes off to the people that are putting this together, because it's no easy feat. I know that for sure. So
yeah, Matt Pinchy, you mentioned him, and he put out a great article on LinkedIn yesterday about how bonus depreciation is fantastic, but if there's a sale, there's going to be a recapture that you have to it'll come out in your cost segregation. And I thought that was a great point, and usually they don't really talk about that. It's just like, oh well, when you buy, you get this bonus depreciation. It's all fantastic.
And if you sell, right? Because Warren Buffett said the best time to sell is never.
Right. So. Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the BRRRR strategy.
Yeah. Let me ask this, isn't there a point in time where they can't claw back after sale?
Yeah, I seem to recall that when you calculate it out, it's something weird like 27 point whatever years, or like somewhere around 30 years is what the depreciation is supposed to be based on. And I've always, the way I remember that is I take that as an indicator of the government saying that if something lasts 30 years, most of that is good luck rather than design. So
Yeah.
right, so like if it's still standing after 30 years, well, it's like good on you and your builders, but like in general it's going to be effectively worthless, like other than like the bones if you do it really well. So that's when it goes to zero, and you just own it outright and you're good stuff. But
Yeah.
I'm not a CPA either.
So you don't celebrate July 4th in Canada, huh?
Oh, well, I do more or less, but yeah, no, it's we have Canada Day on the 1st, which is when we passed the British North America Act, basically making it an independent country of from Britain, but still part of the Commonwealth. It's very exciting stuff that really has very little impact, but it's supposed to inspire some sort of loyalty and oh well, we don't want to be like the Americans because they turned around into Britain and said no, we don't want anything to do with you, but no, we're still friends with Britain. And it's just like, well, what's Britain done for me lately? I don't know, but I can be a little bit cynical when it comes to those sorts of
Hey,
responsibilities.
little sarcasm never hurt anybody, Dan.
Right, yeah, it's great as long as it's actually obvious that you're not being serious. It's when people are, like they try to be sarcastic, but you can't really tell. That's not much fun.
So is there a virtual component for the GOB conference?
Yes, there is. There
Oh,
are virtual tickets that you can pick up at the site.
okay, good. So people that can't make it to Chicago, and I just encourage people to come to Chicago. I mean, the weather's been great here. It's a good time of year, and there's nothing like summer in the city. Time on the lakefront is fun. If you're interested in that, and there's a lot of things you can do. You go for a boat ride, great restaurants, and I'm easy for a dinner or a lunch. So just look me up if you're here in Chicago.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And you make a great point. It's like, well, which one do you choose? Do you choose the virtual or you do the in person? And I think the answer is actually quite straightforward. You absolutely should do the in person because you got to understand the nature of the business. That all goes back to, like why I do 506B me. So they have all these weird restrictions about 506B compliance, but once you actually know how to gain investors' trust, it's actually just common sense. You need to know the person. You need to make sure that you're doing them a favor by including them instead of doing them a disservice. And if you are asking for investors, they're not like people. Most people haven't made the connection that, like, if you only know somebody from online, that you actually can know that person. So because they haven't made that connection in their heads yet, they're not going to invest in anybody unless they've shaken their hand. You need to have that in-person interaction. So being there in person and meeting these people so they can look at you in the eye and see that, as soon as the camera's off or the Zoom is done, you're not a completely different person. So going in person is very important. And 506B Me is supposed to help get in that neighborhood, but completely virtually, getting to know people enough where it's like, okay, yeah, I know how this person ticks. I know why they're doing it. I know what they're looking for. And I've got a lot of confidence that they're not just going to say, oh, this is hard, so I'm going to stop, even though I already took a bunch of
Yeah.
people's money. That's what you don't want. And that's what you need to be sniffing for, as far as I'm concerned.
Awesome. Hey, I'm going to shift up a little bit and head to some bonus questions. But before we do that, I just wanted to make one comment on what you were saying, which was, definitely the in-person event. You can only network so much on Zoom, right?
Mhm.
As much as you use LinkedIn or Facebook and can do Zoom meetings and meet people and talk on the phone, There's nothing better for raising capital and meeting people in person and shaking somebody's hand and, starting to build that initial relationship. Remember, you've got to plant the seed, water it, and harvest it at some point. So, there's nothing like an in-person event, right?
Definitely.
All right, 3 bonus questions.
All right.
Best book you ever read?
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a really hard one because then I'm also prioritizing what part of your life to really focus on. And so like if you want to know me, then the philosophy and the ethics and the metaphysics, like that's paramount. Okay. So like my own favorite book, it has nothing to do with real estate at all, which would be Nagarjuna's Karika. It's Muya Madhya Karakakiya. No, I messed that up. Muya Madhya Kakarika. That's better. That's how you pronounce it, but that's why people call it the Karika. And basically what that does is it helps understand where you're guessing about reality itself rather than the actual truth. But if you're looking for something more related to real estate, specifically, I do have my own book, which I'm pretty happy about, which is Real Estate is a Scam. And you can find that at realestateisascam.com. And yes, that's partially marketing. Absolutely. Okay. Like, is real estate a scam? Well, I can tell you the government is holding all of the cards. There's no other way of looking at it. It's the government's holding all the cards. But as far as like interacting with people, real estate is not a scam. But I've found so many ways where people could, jump into it and walk away and think that it is. But that's just because they just don't know how it's done, or they overlooked some things like they didn't bother doing proper inspections. For example, if you don't do proper inspections, then you're playing with fire. Absolutely. So that book right there, the idea was from a digital security standpoint, because that was my background. As I was learning commercial real estate, I'm going like, okay, what's not a level playing field? What is just ripe with opportunity for somebody to lose their shirt? And then instead of trying to sweep it under the rug, I decided to make a video about all of those things and say, this is what full-timers do to make sure they don't lose their shirt for this exact reason. And the book version of Real Estate is a Scam.com is more about saying like, okay, all businesses are a minefield. Real estate is a business. So where are the mines buried? And one of them is, like I was saying about the lemonade stand and selling a security. I've actually got a friend who he and his other friend, they both got their law degree and passed the bar exam and almost immediately proceeded to sell a security without knowing that that's illegal. So like that's an optional set of courses you take in law school, is to find out securities law. So you could actually be a lawyer and not even know that it's against the law. It's just mind blowing.
It's crazy.
So that's what I wanted to emphasize in the book, is say like, okay, well, this seems to be, like I joke that it's the way not to do real estate. It tells you how not to do real estate, where most books tell you how to do real estate.
Right. Interesting. Hey, favorite food?
Favorite food, another difficult one. It's because I do a lot of cooking and I've done a lot of experimentation. And
That sounds scary.
yeah, so I guess like I had this week, so it probably wouldn't be. So the one dish that from Taiwan, where I found that, being outside of Taiwan, I just couldn't handle not having this. That would be beef noodle soup. And actually about 12 years ago, I learned to make it from scratch on my own. And so since then, I've been able to be away from Taiwan without missing out on that. So that'd probably be my number one.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then last question, favorite tourist attraction?
Favorite tourist attraction? Wow. Yeah, that's the thing. See, I'm always a people person. So like when I travel, what I'm really into is getting to know what's it like living there. What's it like being a person from that place? And so the buildings, or like whatever it is that people put together, it's not too high on my list. But I think part of the reason is because like I haven't been able to travel America. I've just been able to go to one city here, one city there, that sort of thing. So I've never seen like Mount Rushmore or something like that I think would be a pretty amazing place to see. But yeah, it's just not coming to me as far as one where I'm like, wow, that's a place you got to see. There's a bridge in Taipei that I really like to cross that it's not really meant for foot traffic, but that's because it has the Grand Hotel and it's on the Geelong River. Yeah. So that's, yeah, I really don't know. I guess I got nothing for you there.
Well, listen, not everybody's got something. So
yeah.
Appreciate you being here this morning. It's been great. We have to give a ticket away to a winner. Can you read all the chats?
Yeah, let me see here. So I hit comments. There we go. Okay, cool. So what we got? Major investors.
Here's what I like. Randy Joe says, I'd like to come to Chicago, but she can't because her W-2. And somebody said, Randy, get out of the chains. Love that. But Cheryl said, Cheryl would like to come to Chicago. And so, I know there's a couple other people that have been on and haven't said anything. Hey, listen, if you're out there and you want a free ticket for the Gob Network Conference, July 13th and 14th, throw in the chat that you can come to Chicago. Dan is going to pick a winner right now.
Exactly. So let's see if we got any more coming on here. Honestly though, I'm looking at how much effort Cheryl put into this, and I think it'd be a travesty not to choose her. I'd love to see more engagement here, more people talking. It's sad to see that people miss their chance, but yeah, I think I'm going to have to go for Cheryl here since she's Boston to Chicago. I bet you that's a wonderful trip this time of year.
Yeah. Hey, Cheryl, send me an email on that. Send Dan an email and he'll send you some noodles because she said she loves noodles and love to try them.
There you go. Yeah, it's just your local Asian supermarket probably has you covered. And the main tricks for it, just any kind of beef stock that you can throw in there. It's but you got to get those handmade noodles because the factory ones that are all dried out, they're just not. They just don't scratch that itch.
All right. Hey, Dan, thanks for being here today, man. It's been great to get to know you over the last few weeks, too. I mean, we spent some time together and interesting, a lot of good conversation. And one thing I like is that you'll keep people compliant. So that's cool. Awesome. And that's what we all need to do. And especially want to stay that way when it comes down to putting together a syndication. But everybody, thanks for being here. If you need to connect with Dan, you can find him on LinkedIn or go to dandoesdeals.com or Real Estate's a Scam. Take your pick. I don't believe real estate's a scam, and I don't think Dan really does either. Hey, we had Diana on from Nashville and Randy Joe and other people on this morning. We said hi to Cheryl from Boston. And so we were glad that you're here. Make sure you tell somebody about the show. Listen, if you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. We're here every Saturday morning, and there's a ton of free content out there. Get some information, learn more about the multifamily business. And last plug, come to the Gob conference, July 13th, 14th in Chicago. It's going to be at the O'Hare Westin. It's going to be 2 days of some intense networking. We're going to have great speakers. Luke Wren will be the keynote speaker, but I get to share the stage with, Brian Briscoe, Georgia Brew, a number of different people. If I forgot you, please forgive me. And I look forward to meeting everybody at the event. Trevor, good to see you this morning. Glad that you're here. Jim, good to see you here this morning. Big shout out to Jim Biggs and the people behind the scenes that are putting this thing together. So, Dan, it's been wonderful. Any last parting words?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you. I'd also definitely like to thank Jim Biggs because he's helped me a lot personally. That it really I needed some help, and he's really come through. It's great to have friends like him. That's absolutely for sure.
Yeah, he's got a big heart, man.